Hey everybody, you're watching We the Fandom, where we discuss comic books, pop culture, and the fandom experience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content. How's it going, everybody? Jacob here at We the Fandom, and today I wanted to talk about the origin and history of the Ravencroft Institute, which is going to appear in Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. So I just recently discovered that Marvel in the past couple of years has released some comics going over the origins of the Ravencroft Institute, which are actually pretty interesting in my opinion. And that's usually what Marvel does. Whenever something is going to show up in the MCU or now the Sony universe, they usually make a comic about that character or that theme before the movie comes out to help drum up some attention. But anyways, the Ravencroft Institute is a maximum security institution located in Westchester County, New York, and it's devoted to the study and incarceration of the criminally insane. But its origin actually started in the 15th century, when the land that it was built on was known to be cursed by the local indigenous tribes, having been claimed as the territory of a cannibalistic cult that worshipped Knull, the god of the symbiotes, of which the symbiotes of Venom and Carnage are derived from. In the year 1524, Giovanni da Verrazzano, who was a real-life 16th century explorer, was in the region where the institute would one day be built when some of his men ended up going missing. He led a search party for his men and eventually found their remains, skinned, chopped into pieces, and those remains were arranged into a spiral pattern. Giovanni was so terrified by this experience that he ended his expedition early. The first holding facility to be built on this land, and what would become the precursor to the institute, was a single wooden cell constructed in 1664, built to house Cortland Cassidy, the ancestor of Cletus Cassidy, aka Carnage, and a settler who came into contact with the cannibal cult of Knull and would be driven insane by them, killing the other members of his settlement before being imprisoned. At some point, he would escape and kill his wife, Molly Ravencroft, the ancestor of the man who built the official institute. This region would see continued instability over the generations. In 1783, one of the final battles of the Revolutionary War took place on this land, and it was here that the quote-unquote original Captain America would be killed by a stray cannonball. In 1804, a cult that worshipped the extra-dimensional god Shumagorath was formed on the land. In 1820, the region was visited by the Headless Horseman, who in the Marvel Universe was that time period's spirit of vengeance. In 1862, Tyrannus, a former Roman emperor and servant of the Olympian god Pluto, led an invasion from his city of Subterranea during a battle of the Civil War. In 1891, the Skrulls landed in the region to begin their clandestine invasion of Earth, with one of them taking the form of Teddy Roosevelt. At the end of the 19th century, Jonas Ravencroft, the descendant of Molly, founded the maximum security psychiatric facility on the same spot where his ancestor was murdered. The construction of the facility was met by many protests as well as acts of sabotage by the locals, who recognized the land as being evil, though it would eventually be completed. Jonas would keep a journal of the history of Ravencroft and all of its sinister occurrences, which would later be buried in the buildings and found centuries later. Starting in 1909, Dr. Jonas Ravencroft would end up having a number of strange patients as well as staff, those staff including Nathaniel Essex, later to be known as Mr. Sinister, the X-Men villain who would use his time at Ravencroft to conduct horrible experiments, Claudia Russell, secretly a werewolf, though after trying to stop Nathaniel Essex, she would be killed and vivisected. Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, was even an orderly there for a time when Wolverine was a patient, watching him get tortured as a means of revenge. Other strange patients would include Sir Percy of Scandia, the original Black Knight, who had traveled through time, a 40,000-year-old caveman, an escape by Al Capone and Silas Burr, who was a mutant criminal, and in 1933, Loki, the god of mischief, was even held briefly before using his magic to put the guards in straitjackets. During World War II, the clandestine Weapons Plus organization was conducting experiments in accordance with their partnership with Count Dracula in an attempt to cure vampires of the aversion to sunlight. Captain America and Bucky happened to infiltrate the facility looking for a friend of theirs in what led to a fight between the future Avenger and Dracula, with Dr. Jonas releasing all of the experiments before committing suicide. At the end of the 20th century, Louise Cassidy, a patient at Ravencroft, was given an unsedated electroshock therapy while pregnant, leading to the stillbirth of Cletus Cassidy, though he would be revived minutes later by the power of the symbiote god Knull. In modern day, the Ravencroft Institute was run by psychiatrist Ashley Kafka when Cletus Cassidy was brought in after being defeated by Spider-Man and Venom. While having his blood tested, he would be able to resummon the Carnage symbiote and start indiscriminately killing guards when he meets Shriek, a woman who can generate sound waves and had a desire to join Carnage in his killing spree. She will also be appearing in Venom 2 in a similar circumstance. Over the years, there have been a number of minor appearances of different heroes and villains being involved with Ravencroft. During the Absolute Carnage event, where Carnage was trying to awaken Knull, the symbiote god, he was working alongside the cult of Knull while fighting Spider-Man and Venom, but after the fight was over, and while the cult was engaged in a ritual, Deadpool shows up, ruins the ritual, and then he burns down the asylum before he escapes. More recently, Ravencroft was rebuilt and taken over by the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, who was also mayor of New York City at this time. And he had hired former supervillains as a staff to include the Green Goblin Norman Osborn. During an event in the Spider-Man comics, which I won't get into all that, Spider-Man ends up having to team up with Norman Osborn to defeat a villain named Sin Eater, who at the time had absorbed the power of the Juggernaut, and thus the only way they could stop him was to basically bring down the entire facility. Of course, Norman Osborn ends up betraying Spider-Man, so that's a whole thing, but the point is, as it stands right now, Ravencroft is more or less a pile of rubble as far as I know. Now, while this place will show up in the Venom sequel, the Ravencroft Institute has already shown up in live action, with its first appearance being in Amazing Spider-Man #2, when Harry Osborn freed Electro to help him break into Oscorp, and later on when Harry would become a patient himself after being beaten by Spider-Man. In a lot of ways, Ravencroft is meant to be Marvel's version of DC's Arkham Asylum, though comparably, it takes a much smaller role in the Marvel universe. But let me know what you guys thought about this in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. I'll see you all next time.